Today's topic is everything your father should have taught you about female psychology. Now, I'm going to give a trigger warning right up front because this is going to be some controversial stuff. There have been entire careers, books, philosophers who have dedicated their time, energy, thought into this topic. I am not going that deep. We are going to deal with those things that are most important and help us understand most clearly what's motivating women. Why are they behaving the way they are? What can I do to affect it? So, today we're getting into female psychology. This is Life 2.0. Let's talk about it. Let's go, pal. This video requires that I make a lot of generalizations. I realize this does not apply to every single woman under every single circumstance. But generally speaking, this is what you can expect. Women see character traits like loyalty, integrity, and honor different than men. And they behave differently than men do. Understanding these behaviors and recognizing them when you see them will help you feel less betrayed. Betrayal is probably the most significantly damaging fallout from a failed relationship, especially a divorce where you've had a strong, intimate relationship with a woman and suddenly, out of nowhere, she's with somebody else and you don't understand why. That sense of betrayal runs deep and it can ruin a man's life. There's no question about it. So rather than feeling betrayed, if you could understand what her motivations were, you might feel a little less betrayed and perhaps a little more, validated. So, the first thing you have to understand is that there's going to be a lot of overlap between men and women on some of these things. It's really just a matter of degrees. So, both men and women have negative bias, which means that we tend to identify stimuli in our environment negatively first. So, for example, I'm walking the dogs and I see a coyote. I'm initially going to assume that that coyote is not interested in being friends, that there's going to be some negative bias that I'm going to have toward that coyote as a potential threat to me or the dogs. Curiosity and friendliness are not the first things that come to mind. But I'm not also turning on my fear mechanism. So with women, they're going to see that coyote the same way. They're going to have a negative bias toward it. But to the degree to which fear kicks in is the difference. Fear is the mechanism that turns on the fight or flight systems in our bodies. Fight or flight is obviously crucially important because it is a survival mechanism. It's something that we use to protect ourselves at times of danger. The problem with fight or flight is that it draws blood away from the brain and it sends all the energy and the blood to the extremities so that you can run and you can potentially fight for your life. When the blood flows away from the brain literally constricts. It literally gets smaller. Your prefrontal cortex is no longer the functioning control mechanism in your brain. It now moves to a more primitive site. Your amygdala becomes primary. Your reptilian brain, all those animal natures start to rise to the surface. And they have to, because dealing with that coyote, if that thing's rabid, that might turn into a fight or flight mechanism. That might be something where you've got to get a stick or a rock or God knows what and fight this thing off in order to protect yourself and the ones that you love. But in modern life, obviously, and certainly in relationships, that threat is not nearly as powerful, yet the same mechanism kicks in. Men, whether it be from culture or it's genetic or it's just the way we're made, I don't know, but we deal with, just generally speaking, this isn't true for everyone, but we deal with threats differently than women do. So before that fight or flight mechanism gets kicked in, there is a moment of rational thought that occurs where we are assessing the threat. We're assessing, say with the coyote, the distance to the threat, the behavior of the threat, the likelihood of a threat, what are my resources around me. You're doing an assessment very quickly and making a rational decision about what needs to be done under these circumstances. Your fight or flight mechanism hasn't kicked in at this moment. Now, if that coyote comes rushing towards you and you can see foam coming from its mouth, that's different. Now the fight or flight mechanism kicks in. Now you start getting down and thinking about how you're going to defend yourself or what you're going to do. But the initial observation of a potential threat, a stimuli in the environment, does not cause that threat mechanism to turn on. With women, it does. Not all the time. There are certainly women who can rationalize their ways through this thing, but the vast majority are immediately going to go into a state of panic. And they will do this in a relationship too. The difference is, in relationships, what we deem as threats and what they deem as threats are completely different. And that's where the disconnect occurs. So in my coyote example, it's kind of a universal threat. We can all identify that a coyote could be a threat to me or my dogs out in the woods. Where we get into trouble is threat identification. So I come across snakes all the time, and there are very few venomous snakes in this area. I think there are two. There's water moccasins, which are rare, but they still exist, and then there are copperheads in this area. And they're much more commonplace. But generally speaking, as venomous snakes go, copperheads are not nearly as aggressive as some others. So they're not going to come hunting for me or my dogs. But a woman, I remember walking through the trails with a woman I knew for a while, and we came across a snake. It was like a black snake on the trail. And she immediately went into complete freak out mode. I mean, like, her freaking out freaked out the dogs, it freaked me out a little bit. I was like, wait a second, it's a fucking black snake, okay? Let's just watch it. It's just gonna go from one side of the trail to the other side of the trail. He has no interest in us whatsoever. He is aware of our presence, but he does not want to tangle with us. He is not in, that mode of thinking. In fact, he would prefer just to slither away as quickly as possible and get on to whatever mouse he wants to eat or whatever. But yeah, her threat identification got turned on because she saw a snake, and she just assumed that all snakes were bad. Lack of knowledge, lack of rational thought, lack of situational awareness, and you go from 0 to 100 on that fight or flight mechanism. And that's what happens frequently with women in day-to-day life. All right, so you're saying, John, I'm not coming across coyotes or snakes in my life with my wife. What's your point here, man? Help me understand. How does this affect me in my life? Well, you get a credit card bill in the mail that's more than you can afford to pay, the whole balance. So you've got to make installments on this credit card bill. Let's say it's a lot. Let's say it's like a $20,000 bill. Maybe you had some medical expenses that came up and you had to put it on a credit card because you've got a huge deductible. Common situation, right? That could happen. You see this problem as a problem that can be solved. You are planning ahead. Okay, if I can put $1,000 a month into this thing, in a couple years we'll get the thing paid off. Maybe I'll get a windfall, a tax return, something like that, and we'll get it paid off. We'll just make it a priority. She sees this $20,000 bill as a threat. It's not a problem to be solved. It's a fight or flight time. It's like, oh my God, how are we ever going to pay this? Now, she may not take off at the first sign of a bill. I'm not suggesting that is the case at all. But it triggers that fight or flight mechanism. She will not have rational thought following this point. All the blood is rushing away from her brain. It's very likely she will become emotional, angry, upset. She's going to potentially even attack you for the situation, even though it may not even be your fault. She may immediately go to anger. She may immediately go to fear. She may run away. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are going to happen under these circumstances. She may just internalize it, which could be even worse. She could even just turn it into some form of, simmering resentment or whatever that she has. But the fact that you guys don't have the ability to pay this bill in this moment is deemed as a threat to her survival. Okay? It's a threat to her survival. You start adding up a few of these kinds of things that occur, you know. Maybe the car breaks down after the bill comes, you know, and now you're faced with an even bigger financial responsibility or problem that you got to deal with. Maybe she has an unexpected pregnancy after the bill and the car, and now she's pregnant. And now it's a complicated pregnancy. Oh my God, she can't work now. So now your income's being cut by, you know, a significant portion. So now you can start to see how the day-to-day life can evolve from one threat to the next, to the next, to the next, and you're thinking problem solve, problem solve, problem solve, and even worst case scenario. I mean, worst case scenario, you file bankruptcy. Like, you can still recover from that. That's not the end of your life. That's not like the worst thing that could possibly happen to you. Obviously, it's not desirable, but if you had to, you could do it. You get a loan. And there's all kinds of ways of dealing with it. You know, go to family, friends, whatever. You can find a way to deal with a financial, you know, set of circumstances that gets out of control. But for her, the prefrontal cortex is shut off, the fight or flight mechanism is turned on. She is no longer, you know, thinking rationally, or even if she could, she's certainly not going to do it now. It's a threat to her survival. Suddenly, this situation, the situation that she's in with you in your marriage, is becoming more and more untenable. Now you start throwing in some other things. Let's say, let's get away from the finances and let's talk about relationship stuff. Maybe you guys are fighting about household chores, household issues. Maybe she's not happy with the way you're performing around the house. So now she's seeing that as a reflection of your lack of respect for her, a lack of love for her, because you're not doing the things that she wants you to do. You're not living up to her expectations. That is a threat to her. You see what I mean? Throw another layer on there. Let's say you're working late. You know, you're trying to make extra money. So now you're staying out late. Oh, and you're getting text messages in the middle of the night because your customers and your coworkers are constantly texting you all the time. So now she's got this illusion or this idea in her head that maybe you're cheating because you're gone all hours of the night and you're getting all these mysterious text messages throughout the day and night that you never got before. Now you're just trying to make more money to solve these problems. You're just looking for solutions, and you even tell her that, but she's not buying it completely because she's insecure. Her fight or flight mechanism is turned on. Her radar is at full blast. She is seeing the world that she's in right now as a series of threats to her survival. And the likelihood that she's going to leave is going to escalate with each and every one of these things as it's layered on. So now let's superimpose some of our values on this situation and see how they fare. So loyalty. This is one that men hold in high value. In a male-to-male relationship, in a war zone, in a sports team, in any situation where there might be a threat or there's stress, loyalty becomes more and more central to the relationship that you have with your comrades. You would think that in a relationship with someone that you are intimately involved and you've dedicated your life to, that there would be a sense of loyalty in this situation. Like, let's bind together and figure this thing out. Well, for women, that's not necessarily the case. Again, prefrontal cortex not working too well, blood flowing to the feet, to the arms, fight or flight is turned on. Fighting probably isn't going to be a solution to this problem, and so running becomes much more likely. That brings into the hypergamy that we have talked about in other videos. She's going to look for a safe place. So loyalty to you is secondary to her survival. And that plays also into integrity. So when survival is the issue, loyalty becomes secondary, tertiary, even further down. Hypergamy kicks in. She's looking for a place where she can be safe. And even though she might truly, truly love you as a person, she may come in contact with a man who has greater resources than you. And I promise you, under these circumstances, when there is a threat in her mind, a perception of threat, her survival instinct will override her love for you, and she will go to that soft landing place, even though she may not love this other guy. You know, if this guy has, you know, is a millionaire, you know, if it's, you know, Jeff Bezos calls, you know, he may not be that good looking, he may not be that charismatic, she may not even like him, much less love him, but those $400 billion or whatever he's got, that's a safe landing place. Even with a prenup, she's still going to be good. You know what I mean? So, yeah, don't be shocked if loyalty is on a sliding scale. You know what I mean? It's discretionary. It gets pushed down on the hierarchy of character traits that are valuable to her. Although she'll demand them from you, don't question that. But they will become optional to her given the circumstances. And if she perceives that her survival is at risk, her loyalty to you will be gone. What's interesting about this is that integrity works exactly the same way. So for you, for most men, it's a sign of integrity to stick by your guns, to stick by your values, to hold those characteristics that you value in high regard, and to honor them by being true to them. So for example, your marriage is on the rocks. You haven't been happy in this thing for years. You've got kids. Men will sacrifice themselves for their families. They will take the beating emotionally and psychologically to try to insulate their kids from their crazy wives. Even in the worst of circumstances, I've seen guys just hang in there and just do what they think is right because it preserves the family. It keeps the family unit together. They think that this is better for the children. And you know, it very well may be in many cases. There's no way to know for sure, but certainly from that man's perspective, he will do that. Women do not do that. They will, again, turn the integrity around and see that being true to themselves is a sign of integrity. That rather than being dedicated to the family and to the children and to the betterment of everyone, the self-sacrificing nature that men bring to the situation, women will turn it around and say, my highest integrity is being true to myself. If I'm happy, if I'm valuing my time and my energy and my needs, then everyone will benefit. And I'm not being cruel here. I'm not taking shots at women here. This is truly the way they think. They really do believe in that whole you go girl mentality. Like, yeah, it's all about you, baby. You need to take care of yourself. You need to do those things that are necessary to make sure that you are fulfilled and happy in the end. Because if you're fulfilled and happy in the end, then you will have been true to yourself. And that is the highest form of integrity. Women use something that psychologists call adaptive integrity, or adaptive, I guess, a situational cognitive flexibility. I think that's what it is, where they will adapt their values to the circumstances and apply them in ways that benefit them and their situation. Again, with survival being the primary motivation. And you have to keep that uppermost in your mind, that their way of dealing with threats is different than men's. Men have always traditionally been able to rely upon being physically bigger and stronger. We have better visual acuity, better hand-eye coordination, our spatial awareness is better, our ability to deal with problem solving generally is better. We have been raised with a stoic mentality. Generally speaking, male culture is more internal, while women's culture is much more external. So the process that causes women to behave in ways that we would determine are low value or are without values, that are I'm trying of the right word. They are ethically lacking. From a woman's perspective, they don't see it that way at all. They see that their self-preservation under these circumstances is completely justified. And even when, because I know that women will try to rationalize their behaviors by pointing to the factors in their lives that cause them to act in ways that are inexcusable by our standards, they will try to use a rational argument. But when none exists, and this is so critical to understand, is they will make something up. So they will take some situation that's happening in your life and they will raise it up to a level that justifies their bad behavior. Even though the situation, whatever it may have been, probably was not the actual cause of the problem. Like in the example I used earlier with the mounting bills and the working late and the unexpected pregnancy and all these things happening, you can see that there's a groundswell of stress that's occurring in this relationship. And she doesn't know exactly why. She's feeling like she can't breathe, like her chest is tight all the time, like she's got this anxiety that things are just going really, really badly. She feels like she's in a building that's on fire and she just needs to get out. And she's going to turn it around and she's going to say, well, I left because I thought you were cheating. Exactly. Yeah, she's going to say, I caught you cheating. Even though that may not be true, she's going to use that as the reason for her packing her bags and walking out. The purpose of this video is not to bash women. I know I have used these arguments in the past to take shots at them. And really in this video, I'm not taking shots here. I'm really trying to help you as a man understand that in order to have a relationship with a woman, you need to constantly be checking in on her to see where she is psychologically and emotionally. Where you as a man, like I said, live an internal world and are less likely to get worked up about some of these issues. As a woman, she's much more likely to be put into a state of survival, existential fear than you are. The only way to prevent this from happening is to be in constant conversation with her about her state of mind and understanding where she is. And don't take her anger, resentment, and her negative reaction to these situations personally. Understand that the blood's flowing away from her brain, prefrontal cortex isn't working, she's in a state of survival fear, and you're going to have to work with her to bring it down and help her understand that you've got everything under control. You have to reassure her that she's safe. You've got to be constantly reassuring her that she is in a safe place, that you are in control, that you are leading the situation. She has nothing to worry about. If you give her any reason to validate her fear, her existential survival, I'm gonna have to run away fear, if you give her any reason to believe that by pushing back, by pointing fingers, by having a fight, by just blowing this thing up, or by overreacting to whatever it is that happened, then you're just adding fuel to the fire. And you're going to drive her off much, much faster. So in order to deal with a woman who is dealing with some things, like you have some negative stuff happening in your life, like the plumbing froze this winter, and all the pipes have to be replaced. It's going to cost you a bunch of money. You got damage all over the place. It's a crisis, no question about it. Keeping that crisis as a manageable crisis versus an existential crisis is your job. That's your job as a man, is you've got to provide and protect. And sometimes you need to protect your family, protect your wife from herself. And you do that by assuring her all the time that you've got this handled. You've got it handled. You cannot ever express insecurity or fear that you don't have things under control unless you're going into that existential fear mechanism yourself, and it truly is fight or flight. There is a pack of wolves running at you and they're all foaming at the mouth and you're like, fuck it, it's a foot race. You know, I don't need to be faster than the wolves, baby. I just need to be faster than you. No, that would be terrible. But you know what I mean. You do not ever let them think that you haven't got this handled. That is the critical element to dealing with women psychologically. And it kind of fits into everything else we've been talking about, like having a strong masculine frame where you have a vision for your life and you know how she fits into it. When you have that vision for yourself and you have that trail sort of in mind and where you're going and how you're going to be living and what your life looks like, there's going to be bumps in the road. That just happens. There's going to be bumps in the road. And you just have to recognize that that's going to be the case. And when they do pop up, you need to reassure her that you knew this was going to happen all along. Like you've got a plan for it. Don't worry about it. It's all going to be fine. But if she thinks for 1 minute that you haven't got this figured out, she'll find someone who will figure it out for her. Trust me. All right, you guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please like and subscribe. When you guys give me the thumbs up, it tells the algorithm that you like this content and it will find guys like you and send it out to them. If you want to continue to see these kinds of videos, YouTube's getting really weird with their algorithm. So you got to turn that bell, that notification thing on. If you don't turn the notification thing on, it doesn't mean very much in terms of a subscription, because it's very unlikely that you're going to continuously or regularly see these videos show up in your feed. Anyway, till next time, stay healthy, and if you can, stay single.